Lauren started using marijuana at the age of 14, and by 17, her drug of choice was heroin. She says that when she used marijuana, it would often send her into panic attacks, episodes of mania, and worse, it caused her to experience psychosis. Lauren says marijuana was not her harm reduction drug. It always led her back to heroin. So Lauren, we welcome you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. I really appreciate being here. I want to start by saying how incredibly thankful I am to be here. I mean, ever since I learned about her organization, I've always wanted to be able to do my part. And I think the best part, or the best way that I can do so, is to share my story. I mean, it didn't go through what I did to sit back and sit quiet. So I will go ahead and begin. So on the outside, I grew up with a pretty much white picket, picture perfect family, right? But it was always not really like that in the inside. I had great parents, great family, like really, and I appreciate everything they've done for me. But I definitely experienced some early childhood trauma. I always had some issues with my dad, which progressed into bigger things throughout my teen years. But I grew up dancing, and that was pretty much my life and the only thing I did. And because of dance, I developed an eating disorder. I think that this kind of popped up by the time I was 7. And at that time, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And since then, I've been on, well, not now, but I've been on ADHD medication such as stimulants since. I started doing competitive dance, which brought a lot of abuse into my life by dance teachers and just being in really negative situations. From an early age, I definitely think there was always something that was off. There was always something bigger going on. So about when I was 14, I started having some anxiety issues and I stopped dancing as much, so I wasn't busy. And so my freshman year, I was very, how do I put this? Pushy, and I wanted to experience everything that life had, right? So I decided to smoke for the very first time. Since about, well, after that, I started getting really bad anxiety and depression. And then I was very soon diagnosed with anxiety and depression disorder. Later through high school, like that same my freshman year, the big catalyst that was like one of the bigger things that happened to me is I was raped and sexually assaulted by my high school basketball team, which led to a lot of things throughout my years. And because of that, I started smoking more avidly and daily, and my anxiety only got worse. I started isolating. There was times where I had really good friends at school, but I didn't want to sit with them at lunch anymore. I just wanted to listen to music, and I would hide in the bathroom in the library just to avoid conversating with any of my friends, which was really not like me because I'm kind of an extroverted person. So yeah, that happened. And then a couple times after, I really didn't value myself, and I was raped and sexually assaulted again, one resulting in a boy asked me to smoke marijuana with him and took me into the forest. And then XYZ happened. And then after, him and his friends picked me up and shoved a Plan B pill down my throat and then threw me out of the car. So after that happened, I started smoking pretty much every day just to cope. Well, what I thought was coping at the time. I shortly after started therapy and never really got honest with myself. Yeah, so then I stopped smoking for a couple months, and mentally I just wasn't doing well. That this time I had been cutting myself for about 3 years, and I actually had my first suicide attempt. I think I was about 15 or 16. Fast forward to junior year, I tried to be sober for a while and then decided that I would venture back in. And once I dipped my toes in the water, I couldn't seem to have an off switch. So that summer, end of my junior year, going into my senior year, I went and visited my family in California and couldn't be sober for a week. So made my way. We were in California. It's pretty easy to get marijuana in places that are legalized, right? Found it almost immediately. And then at the end of that week, I tried cocaine for the very first time. Um, After that, I came home and I got broken up with the boy I was dating at the time and really took that to heart. And then after, I met up with one of my drug dealers, and that is the first time I was introduced to heroin. But I did not know what I was taking. And I know that sounds stupid. It's like, what do you mean you're just snorting this powder? But I was told it was an opioid or Oxycontin, and I had no idea what that was. I was a 17-year-old girl who grew up in the white suburbs. I had never really experienced what drugs looked like or had the education to know. And I have a very big problem about the inability to say no. And I push too hard and I go all out. So after that, about a month of me dating that drug dealer, he finally fessed up and told me when I was under the influence and told me that he had been giving me heroin for about a month because I started having medical problems and I couldn't figure out why my stomach hurt all the time and why I wasn't eating and why I had all these adverse effects. And I learned that it was heroin. And at that point, I didn't want to stop. So I was physically and mentally addicted to heroin for about 4 or 5 months. My parents did not know. And sorry. I was physically addicted for a long time. I lost 30 pounds within the span of 2 months before going to rehab for the first time. And my boyfriend at the time actually got arrested. And I knew that at that point he needed to help himself. And the best way to help him was to help myself because I am an extremely codependent person. So I decided to seek help and went downstairs to my parents while withdrawing. And if you are familiar with heroin, it's probably one of the worst withdrawal pains you can ever go through. It's definitely the worst pain that I've ever experienced in my life. So my mom took me to the hospital, Texas Children's, and when we got there, we found out that a lot of my major organs were not functioning properly due to that situation. And the day after, I was admitted into the park for adolescents. And I wanted to go. I was willing and ready to go and get help. And I think that's the most important part of recovery is you're not going to get it unless you're willing and ready. So that lasted for about 3 days. And then I decided, Mom, you need to come pick me up. And they didn't, thankfully. They left me there. And I had a really good experience. And I'm still friends with a lot of the people that I got sober with the very first time. So I really appreciate the program that they do there. I came out of that willing and ready to work. And then I had decided that I was going to transfer to Archway Academy, which is a sober school downtown, which was a very good change. And it was really big for me because I was involved in orchestra and dance and photography, all these things at my public high school. And I'd grown up in the same neighborhood with these kids since I was 2 years old. And so it was a really big decision that I was going to uproot my life and move it. But it was the best thing that I needed to do. About 2 months into being at Archway, I started not doing as well, and I knew I needed a change. I started dating this boy who's also in recovery. And then I joined Cornerstone Recovery, APG. Oh, I forgot to mention, I was in PADAP before that, and PADAP was not giving me what I needed, and it works for some people. I don't want to diss it in any way, but Cornerstone was a better fit at the time for me. To him and his family really helped me get integrated into the group, and I really appreciate everything they've done for me since. So about a month into that relationship, we both were relapsing. His drug of choice was meth, and obviously mine was heroin, and it was really hard at the time. And I don't know, I didn't know that he was using at the time, but looking back at all the pictures were there anyway. So there was one night that I started smoking again. And at this point I had ran away. And that was the first night I experienced marijuana-induced psychosis. I ran away and I tried to jump off of our local metro parking garage and was pulled off by my ex-boyfriend and then thrown in the car to go home. I stayed out that night, and in the morning, my parents came and picked me up and took me to Cornerstone, and that was my first intervention, and I was required to go to rehab after that, and I was not willing or ready to be sober at that time. there was no way that I was going to do it. And anyone who knows me personally, I'm one of the most stubborn people you will ever meet in your life. But I think that goes to say for a lot of addicts. So I was able to manipulate the staff at the rehab to letting me go and go to a psych ward, because I knew they would only hold me for about 6 to 7 days. And that was a lot better than staying in rehab for 31 days. So I was sent to Houston Behavioral and had a very traumatizing experience with that hospital. Not saying it's bad for everyone, but my personal situation, it was not the best fit for me. And after that, I came home and was struggling with the idea of staying sober, but decided that I needed to do it for myself. And at that point, during my drug use, I discovered that I was pregnant, and I had been raped by my ex-boyfriend, not the one in recovery. He's amazing, but the one prior during that same time. So I never really knew where it came from. And anyway, about a month into that, I discovered that I had a miscarriage after going to the doctor. So that was a big catalyst, but for me, it motivated me to push through, and that I needed to get sober so that this didn't happen again. And I was in Cornerstone at the time, and for me, that was a really good push, because I'm a very highly driven, competitive person. And if my philosophy at that point of my life was, if I'm not the best, I'm not good at all. So I pushed, I did all the extra things. I did everything that I needed to do. And at that point, I joined AA and got a 12-step sponsor, and I did complete the steps. I was doing really strong and really good for about 5 months. And at the end of my 6th to 7th month, I did too much. I pushed, I rushed into the second part of the Cornerstone program way too early. I got into a new relationship that at the time I thought was great, but it really wasn't. Not to diss that person in any way, just I didn't need that at my time in my life. And so shortly after, I started sponsoring 3 girls, and I love them all so much to this point. And that was a really good change, and that became too much after a while. And I decided, if I just try heroin once, then I can come back and be fine the next day. And I tried it once, and then tried it the next day, and immediately overdosed in my home and had to be Narcaned. And that was the first spiritual experience I think I've really encountered, because I remember being dead in, it was just black. And I can talk more about this later if anyone asks, but I basically begged for my life to be brought back. And then slowly but surely I did get brought back and was Narcaned. So thank God that I'm still here, because I really shouldn't be. After that, I went to a women's rehab in South Padre Island, and it was really hard to get myself to go there. Actually, Aubrey's son James went with me there, and that's a 6.5-hour drive both ways. So I really appreciate him going with me, because I probably wouldn't have gotten out of the car if he wasn't there. I did that for about 2 weeks, and then decided that I did not want to do rehab, because I had at that point, I think I'd been to 5 rehabs, and I was very stubborn, and I thought I knew everything and nobody else could have any input on what I knew. And I didn't want to do it. So I got home, and well, my parents did not come pick me up. So I managed to get from the border of Texas all the way back to Houston without a phone. That's some drug addict stuff right there. But I did it, and I was managed to get home. And at that point, when I knocked on my door, I was asked not to return inside. And I slept outside that night for the first time in the rain and the cold. And that was a very eye-opening experience. After that, I was able to sleep in my garage for about a month or 2. And then at that point, I was still smoking marijuana. I wasn't ready to be sober. I was like, oh, well, if everyone else is doing it, this is okay. And I was going insane. And I forgot to mention, when the first psych ward that I went to, I was diagnosed bipolar, which connected a lot of dots. And I honestly think that smoking had a lot to do with that diagnosis. Fast forward back to where I was. I'm sorry. I'm trying to stay on track, but I forget.
You're
There's
doing
so
great,
much.
Lauren. Love you.
Thank you. Love you too. And anyway, yeah, I was asked to return back to my house on Christmas Day because my parents got COVID, and so I could be upstairs and isolate from everyone, and I was still smoking. And that's when I started smoking Delta 8, which is Satan's spawn, in my opinion. I don't think anything could be worse than that. My experience smoking Delta 8 and all of that stuff was way worse than smoking marijuana, THC. I honestly think that's where the majority of my paranoia and psychosis came from. Anyway, yeah, then about 2 days later, me living back inside, I decided that I wanted to use drugs and I didn't want to be home. So I got kicked out and I was homeless for about 2.5 months, just living on the streets, living wherever I could. I got back, used my ex-boyfriend for a place to stay and for his drugs, really. He was not a good person in any aspect. But yeah, so I was living with him and his mom and brother for a while. And finally, I decided that I needed to go back to rehab because I didn't want to live on the streets and begging boys to sleep, or begging random boys to sleep at their house or whatnot, or have to be a burden on anyone. And so I went back to rehab, and again, that lasted for about 2 weeks. Got frustrated because I was withdrawing from heroin and they discontinued my Suboxone. And Suboxone is the opioid blocker and it helps your withdrawals. And so I was not happy with that decision. And so I left, came back home. I actually ran away from the rehab, and that was in the middle of nowhere, Texas. So I don't know how, or I don't really remember because I was not in the right mental state. Anyway, then I came home for about 3 days and started smoking immediately, and then realized, oh, I'm going to go back. And so I went back to that same rehab for about 2 days, and I ran away again. And thankfully my dad came to the rescue that time. And I know it's very controversial to go rescue your kids in those situations, but I don't think I would have survived the night if my dad hadn't come and got me. So I'm very thankful for the decision my parents have made in my recovery thus far. I came home, immediately started smoking Delta 8 again because I viewed, oh, it's not real THC, it's not marijuana, right? And this was in the earlier stages of the chemical itself. So, there wasn't very much information about it. Not that it would have mattered to me in the first place. Started going through that bad paranoia, that bad psychosis, and I started doing ISS treatment with Janelle Martin at the Mind Connection. And I have been going to her since. I started working with her, and I was on 9 medications for my mental disorders. And after almost a year, I'm down to 2. So thank you, Janelle. It's amazing. I could talk more about ISS later because I honestly think that's one of the main reasons I'm sober today. Anyway, but I was still struggling with staying sober off of marijuana. I've been sober off of heroin and other substances since January 18th. So I'm 11 months sober right now. So I'm very happy about that. But, marijuana always came back, and my kind of bomb drop is I honestly think that it was harder for me to get sober off of marijuana than it ever was to do heroin. And whenever I start smoking again, that's when I relapse on heroin. So it's just definitely a gateway, and I don't think it's any other way for me. I think it'll always be a gateway. Anyway, that lasted for a while, kept trying to get sober, kept not. And then I started working at the dance studio that I actually was abused my entire life, and it's under new management. And since I started working there, my life changed. Being able to work with kids and help other people has been such a catalyst in me feeling good about myself, because my kind of life goals are that if I'm not helping someone, then I'm not doing my job. And so helping people all the time. I also started working for a photography business for dance, and I also really love photography. So that has also been an amazing thing, just to get out of the house and do things. And I absolutely love both of my bosses. They're literally the most amazing people in the entire world. So anyway, so after that, I did really well for a couple of months, and then I started smoking again a little bit, and then I went through a really bad psychosis episode. Started drinking one night and got sexually assaulted that night, and somehow I got home driving to my house. I don't know how, and that night I relapsed on self-harm and was rushed to the hospital. And I say rushed, but it took about 3.5 hours because I kept jumping out of the car in the middle of the road because I didn't want to go, and my dad chased me down and kind of forced me to go. And so once I got there, I was handcuffed and forced to be in the hospital. They held me there for about 3.5 days, and it was really hard. I was by myself and had to think about everything that I had done at that time. I think one of the most hurtful things I ever did was to my ex-boyfriend, my sophomore year ex-boyfriend. We had been very close since we were 14, 15, and I sent him photos of me and my self-harm and blamed him for that. And I think that's probably the worst thing I've ever done, because you can't do that to someone that loves you. So I went to the Woodland Springs mental facility, and it was a really great experience. I immediately, once I got there, realized, what did I just do? This is not me. I can't believe that I've done this again. And went into it really strong and came out even stronger. And I did really well. And unfortunately, I have a boy problem. And the boy that gave me attention while I was in rehab convinced me to smoke when I got out. And that is when I had, I believe, CHS. And that was the worst psychotic episode of my entire life. I was not myself in any aspects. I was freaking out. I could not calm down. The paranoia was the worst I'd ever experienced. And I've been having panic attacks since I was like 10 years old. And for me to say that, I mean, it was brutal, and it was because of smoking. And then after that, I was like, I never want to do this again, because I never want to feel the way that I have. And that is when my viewpoint on marijuana shifted to, this is probably the worst thing I can ever put in my body. So after that, I picked my head up, started going to more meetings, was doing my ISS every week, and I actually did really well. I returned to work, and I've done great since then. I actually started college, and I'm currently getting my LCDC, which that stands for Licensed Chemical Dependency Counselor, so that I can better help other people with my current situation. I think that's the best way I can go about this, and I quite honestly wouldn't want to do anything else with my life. But yeah, I guess that's kind of my story. I'll just kind of say, like, I think the catalyst in me getting sober is being busy and motivated to do things. Staying busy, dancing, 5 days out a week, it's amazing. Doing school, keeping out of my head, doing things for other people, being of service in the community. Those are all things that were really helpful. My recovery program currently looks a lot different than I think the majority of other people. And I don't want to persuade anyone to do what I'm doing or whatnot, because it definitely doesn't work for anyone else. But I'll give you a little brief. So I don't go to Cornerstone anymore. I don't go to AA meetings pretty much ever. And that's just based on, it was so hard for me because I'm so competitive. It was so hard to bank on the number of, I'm 2 days sober, and now I'm 6 months sober, and now I'm a day sober again, and I'm having to start over. And I feel like for me, and we actually covered this in class the other day, there's a lot of shame-based recovery that can come from certain groups. And I'm not saying that is everyone's experience, but for me, I think when I left certain programs, I felt like all my friends had turned against me, and I didn't really have the support I needed anymore. So I left, and my Christmas ornament just fell off. I was scared. Um, but no, I mean, I really just go and I do ISS and therapy. And when I say therapy, I do intense trauma therapy. And I talk about my issues for the first time in my life. And I'm honest and I'm willing to work and I'm honest with my parents. And I have a really great relationship with my family and they're extremely supportive. And my bosses are supportive of my life. And, a lot of people are like, well, you tell your bosses about what you've done. And, I kind of have to because that's part of me. And they're very kind and supportive to me and my issues and they understand. And I really appreciate that about them. But I guess I'll wrap that up and that's my story. So thank y'all.
Lauren, I am so happy for you. Thank you. Very courageous and inspiring. And thank you for showing different pathways to recovery and finding your own. And we will open this up. And I love you. I love you.
Love you. Yes, thank you.
We will open this up for questions or comments. If anybody wants to unmute or raise their hand.
Yeah, hi. Wow, gosh, incredible, Lauren. Thank you so much. I'm Bart. And so yeah, I'm in I'm in so many 12-step programs. I have to find a 12-step program to get unaddicted to 12-step programs. But anyway, so they work for me really well. And I was just so impressed with your perseverance and just getting back on the horse, and it's just so impressive. And so I feel the same way by trying to help others. I definitely have helped myself, and that's the only thing I can see the rest of my life also. And it's interesting when you're talking about secrets. I'm sure you've heard that saying. Anyway, for me, I'm as sick as my secrets. So the more honest I can get with others, of course, myself first, and then share that honesty with others when it's appropriate, especially in meetings and with my sponsor. So I totally get what you're saying. Can you explain a little bit ISS?
Yes. So ISS is basically microcurrent therapy what essentially they do is they connect to different parts of your brain using electricity. It's very low, so you don't even feel it. And it is a process of healing the brain without medication and being like a more naturalistic. I know it kind of sounds crazy because when I started doing it, I was like, this will never work for me. And then I started seeing results.
And but I do totally agree with you that we're all different. And what works for some of us may not work for others. So I'm just so thankful that you found what works for you, and keep coming back.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Barry, do you have a question?
I might have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment. And thanks, Aubrey, for your service and for the invite. I am so blessed to have caught you, Lauren. I'm a recovering addict and alcoholic, and as we know, it's a disease of relapse. What I'm hearing tonight is a miracle. You are here, and there is something in the universe that caused that to happen. That's maybe a power greater than the individual, that lives inside you. And it's such a blessing that you were able to share that story. The trauma that you've gone through, and this is just, my view of it, you'd be entitled to use all of those drugs that you used, because the pain is just so deep and so impossible to deal with. And I know that in my own personal trauma that I had to turn to drugs. I didn't know anything else. I didn't have any coping skills. And when I realized that I'm a miracle, I look at you and I go, now that's somebody who is incredibly fortunate to still be with us because of the lethal nature of some of the things that you put into your body, and that you could have easily turned off and not, become the incredible human being that you are. And again, I feel really incredibly blessed that I was able to hop on and hear your story. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to touch on that a little bit. I agree with what you're saying. I do think that it is a miracle for any addict to really get sober, but I try to change that mindset, that perspective for myself of like redirecting the question or the phrase miracle and saying, like, yeah, it's a miracle, but I worked so hard and you worked so hard to get where you are now. And so was it a miracle, or was it strength and the willingness that we were given that we were able to persevere and continue doing that? Like, I don't want to say I'm a miracle because I don't view myself as any more special than my parents or the kids sitting next to me or anybody experiencing the same thing. I think we're all, we all have the power and the strength. It's just determination of like, what are you willing to do for yourself? But yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you for that. That was really fantastic what you just said. I think for me, I've been sober 35 years. And the miracle for me is the day before I got sober, I wasn't sober. And the day after, I was. And that I remained so. And that is, that in simplest terms is a miracle to me, because I could so easily still be in that pattern. But what you just said is absolutely wonderful. You are a very special person. We are all very special people.
Thank you so much. And congratulations on 35 years. That's amazing.
I believe that people who have gone through this, and the truth, just being willing to tell yourself the truth, us the truth, everyone the truth. With that, most people don't live that way. So one way to look at this is that only because of the experiences you went through can you be the person that you are and help inspire other people to be the person that they should be, that they can be. And that so many people don't live the truth, then you are living the truth. So that's wonderful. And what you said about codependency, so forgive me if no one believes what I'm about to say, but I don't see it as codependency. I see it as very sensitive. I know I am very sensitive, and I think you are a very sensitive person, and that you absorb other people's sensitivities, and that until we learn how to deal with that, we get sucked into different things. And so that it's just because, again, that we're very sensitive and we care so much about other people that we get sucked in. So I'm just saying that there's other ways to look at this, and that, again, it's wonderful what you're doing and the truth that you're living. So I wanted to thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Hi, everybody. And thank you so much for your honesty and your time tonight. My husband and I are parents of a son, a 20-year-old son who is currently struggling with marijuana addiction. So I think my question for you, and I'm so impressed with what you said tonight, but I do have a specific question. It sounds like your relationship with your parents is strong now. And I was wondering if you had advice for us or other parents of young people, maybe something that your parents did that encouraged you, something your parents didn't do, you wish they did.
Thank you so much for asking. This is a great question. I know I definitely have struggled through my adolescence with the relationship of my parents, as any adolescent really does. I will say now, like, my mom is my best friend in this entire world, and I don't think it'll ever change. But I think what really was a catalyst of me getting sober and like what to do as a parent was, you said your son was 20, correct? Yeah. So being a parent of a young adult in recovery looks very differently than being a parent of an adolescent in recovery. The approach is different, right? With an adolescent, you are you have not in control, but you have a lot more authority because you are the one who knows what is going to be the best action for that child. They obviously should have a say the older they get, but at the end of the day, you are the one who makes the decisions. Versus, this is actually why I struggled with some of the sober groups that I was in. Is I was older than most of the other kids, and so were my parents. You know, they were raising I was an adult at the time, and it is when they let go of the reins completely and let me be the one to decide what I wanted to do for myself, because it really is, it's about willingness. If he's not ready, or any child is not ready to do it for themselves and take that on for themselves, you'll never stop. I mean, you really have to make that decision. And sometimes that looks like loving from a distance. I do think that when my dad came to my rescue that night, that showed me they do care, because for a long time I didn't think they did. You know, when you kick your kid out on the streets, love looks a lot differently, especially when you're using. You are so jaded and so confused because there is no transparent feeling, right? It's, my parents are doing this to me, the world is against me, the world is this, and you know, it's not the case. But my only advice would be keep yourself sane and love from a distance, and when he's ready, he will come to you, like, truly. And I'm not personal to the situation, but my best advice is just stick it out, and hopefully he'll find his way. Give the information, don't be over pushing or overbearing. You know, they got to be the ones to decide for themselves what they want. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Lauren. We are trying to do that.
Good. I'm glad to hear
So
it.
your testimony tonight really helps us with strength, and I'm
Good.
sure it helps a lot of other people build that strength. So I just want to let you know how impactful your message is. So
Thank you so much. Yeah. Stick with it. There's always hope. Yeah.
Hi, I didn't introduce myself, but my name's Cameron. I go by Cam. I go to a lot of NA and AA meetings. I haven't been to anything like this. I did come here because my mom recommended me to it, and she was the reason I got in a recovery group. So I said, hey, you know what, I'll give it a shot. First, I want to say, Lauren, I really appreciate your share. It takes a lot of courage to do that, to talk to a bunch of people about your experience and trauma. So I really appreciate that. And other people touched on this, but just hearing your perseverance, getting through it, really gives strength. It does. I also really appreciate your share because I can relate to a lot of it. I was kicked out of my house. I was a drug user. I used different drugs, but I did, weed was one of them, and I had experienced weed-induced psychosis. Not a fun thing. I have a question for you, and you didn't really touch on this, but I was a college student, and I then took a break to go to rehab because of drugs were affecting my life. And I believe I'm 50 days right now, so I feel great about that. Thank you. And I know I shouldn't really be looking too far into the future because it is a little bit a while until I get back on a college campus. First of all, I know you said you were studying. Are you on a college campus though?
Yes.
Okay, I assume so. I wasn't 100% sure though. I used to be a big person who loved going out. I don't know if you're the same, but yeah. So that's something I wanted to ask you. We talk a lot about people, places, and things at meetings. I'm sure you've heard that. And a lot of things I've thought about, but people and going out, do you still surround yourself with people that go out? Did you take a break from that? How did you manage it? Because that's something that I'm very struggling with. I don't want to, rush it too soon or relapse, something like that.
Yeah, no, this is a great question because honestly, one of my biggest insecurities has been that I had to take a year off from school and I couldn't surround myself and I was alone. And sometimes being alone is what you have to be okay with, because I mean, you look around and our friends and our peers aren't exactly sober, and it's very rare to find people our age that don't drink, don't smoke, don't use.
Right.
So for me, it took a really long time, and like this is kind of an individual thing that you have to discover for yourself and what you're going to be willing to take in. But I know it's kind of controversial, but I kind of looked at it at this perspective of my friends are going to drink. They are. If I want to hang out with them, I kind of have to be either okay with it or I don't hang out with them. And both of those things are totally okay to do. My personal boundary is if you use drugs, talk about drugs, glamorize drugs, or suggest my drug use in any way, you are not in my life and there's no reason for me to hang around you. But I will say that, you know, like a great example is my boyfriend currently. He's not in recovery, and it looks a lot different for our relationship, but he understands where I am. And so it's like we talk about those people, places, and things. And I think as long as the people you surround yourself with have the same moral goals and principles that you follow, I think it's healthy. And sometimes, you know, my therapist, Janelle, actually told me some really good advice a couple weeks ago. And she was like, Lauren, the reality is, if you could take a sip of alcohol and be okay the next day, or for me, it would be smoking. If you could smoke a joint and be okay the next day, then fine. You should be able to, but I can't. And I'm sure you're the same way. And some people can, right? Like some people can have a drink and be perfectly fine for another week and won't drink or think about it for another 3 months, right? But, you know, it looks different for me, but I don't like surrounding myself with a bunch of drunk people all the time. But like I do go out, I go to small things, not really club situations. And if I do go out, I actually have a really good friend, Reagan, that, you know, I feel comfortable. She's sober with me. I feel comfortable going out with another sober person because, you know, we can hold each other accountable. But and same with my boyfriend, like anywhere I go, he comes with me because I know at the end of the day, if I want to take a drink, he's going to have my butt over his shoulder and we're leaving. So it's like finding the good people that have the same values and principles. And I could talk about this forever, but I will put my number in the chat for anybody that has any questions or advice or anything. I'm always here to listen, but I hope that helps in just a little bit. But
No, that helps a lot. And I think the reality of it is, I'm reevaluating a lot of friendships. A lot of them I have to drop because they're just fake people and all that. But it doesn't matter. All my friends I look at and they drink in some way. It's college. It's what it is. I'm not going to go back for a while. I'm actually taking a 1-year break myself. But I think that's going to be very helpful to get more comfortable with people drinking, and knowing to surround myself with. I have a good friend I'm staying in touch with who I know he drinks and goes out, but he's supportive and has my values in touch. But yeah, I really appreciated your advice and your share. So thank you.
yeah, of course. Thank you. One other thing I'll just say about that is it's okay if you're not going to be okay with being around that stuff, because that's 100% okay too. Like you don't have to be allowing that into your life. It's really about your personal boundaries. Like I'll say now, like my grandparents and my family, not my parents, but my grandparents, they drink around me, and it quite frankly doesn't bother me at all. If you were smoking weed in front of me, I would be out, but you know, that's like my personal boundaries. I'm okay with it. But
Lauren, didn't James and you go to a concert one time? Didn't you like ask James to go somewhere because you knew he was a safe friend for you, like at one point?
Yeah. Like there's a band who is quite frankly, they're very related with like drug paraphernalia. And the only person I felt comfortable was with going with Aubrey's son, because I knew at the end of the day, we have the same core values and I would be safe and okay with him. So, you know, but you know.
Yeah, pick those friends, Cam, that you know got your back like that, and depending on the situation, and you know, I always live that one day at a time kind of thing. But I think it's really cool when like the kids I was hanging out with, or James or Lauren, you know, they call me like, what are you guys gonna do? Where are you gonna go? And they made the plans to keep it safe, to keep it cool. You know, it was really cool to watch them figure that out.
Yeah.
Great question. Phil, yes.
Hi. Thanks for your input and your story. We need more people like you out speaking. It's one thing for myself. a medical professional to say it, but it's another thing for someone that's a former addict to say it. We need more people like you out in society speaking the truth. And you have to be speaking to the right people as well. And those right people are those that are our city council members, our legislature, and they're not hearing from people that have experienced what you've experienced.
Well,
To try and educate people as to the hazards
yeah,
of the drug. And so I think it's very important to try and help, give you some direction as well to help do that for us, because we're out doing this as well to try and keep people away from drugs. Like, because again, you have the firsthand knowledge and you know what happens, and so do we. And these people don't, and they've been deceived. And it was very enlightening to hear you talk about the Delta 8 THC, because I think a lot of people think that that's nothing. And because it's come from hemp, they've been told that it's nothing and that it's benign and that it's not causing any problems.
it's the little difference between recovery and advocacy work. But Lauren, do you want to respond to that? Or-
Yeah, no, I definitely think change starts with us. I want to do what I can because, not that I want to talk politics, but I definitely have more anti views over, like, I think all of us kind of do. And I think it is important to share my story with this community. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I put a presentation based on Every Brain Matters to my school for anti-marijuana use. And I think I got some good results from that, just educating people that were in recovery themselves and weren't ready to stop smoking. It was a presentation that I don't think anyone spoke. It was
Wow.
very much like jaw dropping. This girl is gonna speak the truth, and nobody was ready to hear it. And I was like, well, I'm okay to be that person. But
That is
yeah.
so awesome. So you got the information from Every Brain Matters for.
Yes,
Oh, Lauren, I'm
yes.
so proud of you. Thank you for that education. And
Mhm.
I just want to share with everybody, I've seen Lauren pick herself up, repeatedly. I've seen her like rock in recovery, and I've seen her, when my son got in the car that day, when her parents drove her to the next rehab. I don't even think she remembers, because I went up to her and hugged her and kissed her, and then I was praying as they drove off. But to see you, you called me that day and said, I want to share my testimony. Like, I just want everybody here to know, I did not ask Lauren to come and do this. She picked up the phone. She says, this stuff is awful. I'm really upset about this, and I need the world to know. So I want to come tell my story. So she is doing the work, and we are so grateful. And it's come from her. It's her decision. So it's genuine and passionate. And Lauren, hearing your testimony tonight, I just kept hearing just the word resilience just kept coming into my brain. You are so driven, and it's so interesting how you know your personality, and then you have picked pathways to support that personality and do what you need to do to take care of you and your recovery. And I love that. And I'm so grateful for that. So I'm going to quit talking here for a second. Does anybody else have any more comments or questions? I think Barry might have had his hand up, but I wasn't sure. Oh, here, somebody else. Hi.
Hi, this is Mimi. That's Kathy Goodfellow, and I'm Lauren's Mimi.
Hi, Lauren's Mimi.
And Lauren, I just want to say how your grandpa and I are so proud of you, and you have really grown into such a poised and beautiful and open, honest person. And I think, understanding and embracing your own truth is so important. And you're doing that, and you're sharing it, and you're helping people. And we are so proud of you.
Thank you so much, Mimi. Love you.
Love you.
Thank Kathy for getting on first, because as a grandparent, we're so proud. And I've never, ever given up on Lauren. And now she just proved who she is. She is just amazing. And yes, I just wanted to tell her I love her and that we're so proud of her too. Just the world is her oyster, and she just keeps this up. She'll be fine.
Thank you, Grandma.
Love you, sweetie.
Love you too.
So awesome. I know you are crying. That's good. Yeah, I'm not the only one blinking back tears. I do have a question if nobody else. Oh, Mary, go ahead.
Just real quick, and Aubrey, again, thank you for awesome service to us all, and it helps us in very many ways. Lauren, phenomenal, and I wish you the very, very best in your future. I just wanted to say, spiritually, it is a belief of mine in my culture. I don't know where I picked it up, but when an ornament drops from the Christmas tree, it means an angel got its wings. The angel got its wings because someone on earth has done such phenomenal, tremendous work. And that's you, Lauren, and bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that just made my day.
Okay, now I'm really crying. Oh my gosh. Lauren, what is your 3 recommendations, 2 or 3 recommendations for a youth, not necessarily teen, but a young adult who is thinking about getting help or maybe in recovery? What is the 3 things you recommend to them?
Definitely staying busy. Staying busy is so important. I mean, I guess this can kind of go hand in hand for anybody. Staying busy, having something that you're getting up every day for. So a motivation, a determination, whether that's school. For me, it's dance and school. And then for me personally, I'm a very creative person, and having that creative outlet, but it could look like other things for you, like having an outlet and something you can do instead of sitting in your room and contemplating whether you should do it or not, because you shouldn't. You shouldn't. There's plenty of other things, even if it's literally getting in your car, taking a drive, or doing something else, having family time. I think like my 4th thing would probably be that you have relationships with someone other than yourself, not like like romantically, but it could be your parents, could be your best friend, could be someone else in recovery. Just having someone that you can talk to that's understanding and not coming from a judgmental state, and they are a perceiving person instead of a judgmental, because in our situation, it's so hard. You know, people, they hear heroin addict and they're like, you're dirty, you're cheap, we don't want you, because there's such a bad stigmatism over it. But really associating with at least one person that is going to listen and understand. They don't have to understand, but they can try, but yeah.
Awesome. And then what are your 2 or 3 recommendations to parents who have a young adult that might be in and out of recovery? What are your recommendations to them?
I'm a big like I said, I'm a teacher. I'm a big advocate of always approaching something with love and patience, because with addiction, you have to be extremely patient, because the reality is they're probably going to go out, and it's very rare to see someone come into recovery and stay sober for however long. It's normal to go up. Not saying normalizing relapse, but normalizing relapse, because and take care of yourself. My relationship with my family did not change until my parents started working their own programs separate from myself. That goes hand in hand with not banking your success over what your child is doing. I see a lot of parents, like even in my own recovery group, that I still see them, that they are very codependent still, and that's okay, but banking what their child is doing off of their success, how many programs that they're in, how many AA meetings they're attending to, because it's not about them, it's about you, and you need to do things, have parent group or friends or people that you can talk to, hobbies, anything, just not banking your life off of your child, right? And I think you see this in sports and competitive things all the time, but yeah, that's life advice to any parent, really.
Well, and I think maybe we need to clarify for everybody who's on the meeting. Lauren's recovery looks different from her parents' recovery, and her parents are involved in the Cornerstone program. I think people think Cornerstone is just for the kids, it's for the family, and it's going to work for, it's not for everybody. Like you mentioned, some other APGs that might have worked for some, but not others. And it comes the same with the recovery with the parents. So, know that to the parents, if you're in a certain program and your kid's not in that program, but they're finding their own way, it's okay. and
Yeah.
keep doing what works best for you.
My mom is also in recovery herself, and she sponsors, could give you her phone number, like anything. I just want to help everyone. So just thank you so much, Aubrey, for doing this. I mean, her organization is amazing.